Hey everybody, I'm Sarah Hokum, PDGA number 34563, here with Team MVP to give you an update on my bag. We're about the middle of the summer in 2019, and as you know, things have changed a lot for me over the last year, and here's an update on what I'm throwing now. Let's start with the distance drivers. My most overstable distance driver is the Photon. I throw that in a couple different plastics. The most overstable one is my Sias Elmore Sias Squatch. All of my Photons are in the low 170s, although you could drop that down. I may drop that down for a little bit less stability. This one is great for headwinds, or if I need a big fade to the right as I'm throwing sidearm, and also can handle quite a bit of angle if I need to make a big flex line that goes roughly about 300, 275 to 325, depending on whether I'm throwing at a hyzer, flat, or anhyzer. This is good for any of those angles. The next one is a neutron Photon. It is a really similar stability to the Proton, just slightly less stable. This is still pretty new in my bag, so again, it's got a ton of fade, get me far to the right or far to the left on a backhand, and can handle all the angle I can put on it on an anhyzer. And then the last one is pretty beat up Photon, neutron plastic. Got this one from Dabs Kramer out in the Cali. Thank you for the trade. Always great to get a beat-in version of some of your favorite stable discs, as they'll have a much straighter flight and a little bit less fade and give you that different variety that you might need. This one goes about 320 on a flat line and is great for a little bit of headwind, but when I still need a little bit of distance. My next set of distance drivers is the Trace. I really love the Trace as my main staple distance driver. It's very predictable. It can handle variability in the wind and also gives me that distance I need off the tee. So my main one is a Proton, sparkly Proton Trace. This is also in the low 170s. Typically I'm going to throw this flat off the tee, although I will put a little bit of angle on it, or I will throw it at a hyzer. It'll go anywhere from about 320 to 340, depending on the angle I'm going to throw it on. And as is usual with my bag, especially with the staples in my bag, I carry two. Along with my main traces, I also have a beat-in trace, also in the Proton plastic and sparkly. This one is older, it goes straighter, has a little bit more turn. In general, the Proton plastic gives me that rigidity that I really like for a consistent release. This one will go, man, if I throw it flat, it'll flex a little bit and goes almost 340, 350. I also throw this on a hyzer line that'll flip up just a little bit to give me a little bit more length when I'm throwing at a pure hyzer. The next set of distance drivers are the Vanish. These go so far that you might vanish out of thin air. You might not even be able to see them by the time they land. These ones are my ultimate distance drivers. I love to throw these at a flat angle. They'll flip up, turn for a while, and then still have that hook up at the end. These are gonna go 330 to 360, about the max of my distance. I have two of them. One of them is a little bit more stable than the other. I also love to throw this disc as for my backhand. It has enough understability that it'll flip up and glide for a while, so I don't have to put a ton of power behind it to get really nice distance. Let's move on to the fairways. My more stable fairway is the Crave. I carry two of them. One's a little more stable than the other. I like to throw these really flat, and then they continue flat with very little fade. This one has a lot less fade than this one. Great for the woods, or great for a control shot into the fairway. These go about 300, 310, and are just really, really useful. It's a point and shoot situation, and they finish so straight that it's really easy to control them and make them fly exactly where you want. After the Crave comes my flippy fairways. I throw the Relay for another straight shot, or a shot that has a little bit of turn, or a shot that has a lot of turn. A lot of times you have these shots that you need to just slowly turn left, or if you're a backhand, slowly turn right. And this is the disc for the job. My most stable one is this blue one. I'm throwing these in about a 170, maybe 168, 172-ish. Really, they're just great for the woods. I like to throw them flat, but you can also put a little bit of hyzer on them and they'll flip up really easily. You can even, from my least stable one, I can start it with hyzer. It'll flip up and turn all the way back over. You don't really need a lot of speed in the woods, so these are just really, really predictable and easy to throw. My next set of drivers is pretty much my utility drivers. So I have the Insanity. I like it in the Proton plastic, sparkly, and these are about 170. I like these for a distance shot in the woods. So they'll flip up, turn a little bit, and then still hook up and get almost the same distance as my distance drivers, but they take a much more narrow line to get there. So really, really powerful disc in the woods. So my next utility driver I like is the Resistor. This is really useful from anywhere from about 200 feet out to about 270. It'll go about 200 feet from a standstill, flat, predictable fade, about 250 if I'm throwing it with a run-up, and then about 275 if I end up flexing it. So a lot of really good options here. It also can handle a nice power roller or a tomahawk. This is one of my favorite drivers to throw for an approach shot. Just stand still inside 200, throw it out to the left flat, gives a nice dump off to the basket right where you need. If you want something with a little bit more fade, I like to go with the second option in my Fairway lineup, which is the Shock. Again, two of them, neutron plastic in the 170s. The Shock is, again, very similar to the Resistor, but has a little bit more fade. So depending on whether you want the tomahawk to come out earlier or whether you need a little bit longer and straighter roller, I like the Shock for a lot of those same exact shots, but just a slight difference in line. Let's move on to the mids and putters. I don't throw a ton of mids, but one of my favorite mids is the Theory. I like it in the neutron plastic. In a high weight, I throw all high weight mids and putters. And this disc is really useful for a bunch of different things. You can throw a backhand or sidearm. It has a nice little turn if you put a tiny bit of angle or power behind it, but it also goes really, really straight from a hyzer flip. So I use that same exact line, both backhand and sidearm, to get anything inside about 200 feet, probably 100 to 200, maybe up to 250 for either a turnover or a flip up flat shot. The other approach disc that I really, really love that is a staple in my bag is the Entropy. I throw this kind of like a mid, even though it's technically classified as a putter. It's my go-to approach disc for anything inside of 200 or just slightly above 200. You can throw it at an Annie, flat, or at a hyzer, depending on what you need for the shot. And it's just wonderfully predictable. It'll dump off right at the basket, but can still handle a ton of power. As for putters, I have basically one approach putter that I really like to use, and this is the Proton Spin. This one just goes really, really straight when you throw it flat, so it's really, really easy to just point and shoot at the basket. It's not gonna fade off to the right a lot. It's not gonna hyzer out early. Really easy to just nestle it right up next to the pin. As far as my putting putters, I putt with two different putters depending on the situation. The Spin and the Ion. I prefer it in the firm plastic. The rigidity really gives me a consistent release. For the Spin, I like to throw this from about 80 feet and in, either on a spin putt or just a turn and throw. The stability allows it to glide a little bit further, but then it still won't go too far past the basket. You can kind of give the basket a safe run. It's also useful for a turnover, both backhand and sidearm. The Ion, I like to use that from about 45 and in. Jump putting with a push putt, I like the bead underneath it. It feels very comfortable in my hand and also has that nice rounded inner rim that matches the shape of your fingers. So it's really, really comfortable in the hand. This disc, I don't throw it a lot, but I do like how straight it is. So when I'm push putting, I don't need to hyzer it into the basket or really correct too much other than keeping my hand right on the pole. And that was my In the Bag. Thanks for watching. If you want to keep up with my tour, follow me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm Sarah Hokum with Team MVP.